In a heartbreaking announcement that has left fans worldwide reeling, the Jackson family has revealed that Randy Jackson, the youngest brother of the iconic King of Pop Michael Jackson, has been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The 71-year-old musician and former Jackson 5 member is facing an incurable prognosis, with the disease already having metastasized extensively. Janet Jackson, Randy's sister and a global superstar in her own right, broke the news to her millions of followers on Instagram, sharing the family's anguish in a raw and emotional post. About a month ago, my brother Randy was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and it's already at the final stage. It has spread, Janet, 59, wrote in her statement. She explained that doctors have deemed a cure impossible, focusing instead on palliative measures to manage his condition. We're trying to stabilize it with chemotherapy, but we don't know how effective it will be or how much time he has left. The post, accompanied by a throwback photo of the siblings, quickly garnered thousands of supportive comments, highlighting the enduring legacy of the Jackson dynasty. The revelation comes just days after Janet hinted at a family health crisis during a recent interview, without specifying details. Sources close to the family say the decision to go public was not taken lightly, as the Jacksons have historically guarded their privacy amid decades of public scrutiny. Janet appeared visibly distraught in her video message, her voice cracking as she addressed the gravity of the situation. "My brother is dying. He can't win this fight. It's become too clear." Despite the despair, she emphasized the importance of transparency, noting that sharing this moment with fans feels essential for Randy and the family. "We've always drawn strength from our supporters, and Randy wants people to know he's fighting with everything he has," she added. Medical experts not involved in Randy's care, like Dr. Elena Ramirez, an oncologist at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, explained the challenges. Pancreatic cancer is insidious because it spreads quickly to nearby organs like the liver and lymph nodes. By stage 4, options are limited to slowing progression, not eradication. Randy's team is reportedly exploring experimental therapies, including immunotherapy trials, in hopes of extending his time. The Jackson family, no strangers to adversity, has rallied around Randy. Siblings like LaToya and Jermaine have posted messages of solidarity on social media, with LaToya writing, "Our bond is unbreakable, praying for miracles." Fans have flooded platforms with tributes using hashtags like Pray for Randy and Jackson Strong. Celebrities, including longtime friend Quincy Jones, who produced Michael's Thriller, expressed shock. Randy's talent and spirit are timeless, sending love to the whole family. As Randy undergoes treatment in a private facility, the family requests privacy, while appreciating the outpouring of support. Janet concluded her post with a note of resilience. "We've overcome so much as a family, and we'll face this together. Thank you for standing with us." This is far from the first time this iconic music figure has stared down brutal adversity. Let's look back at Randy Jackson's turbulent life journey, from years of grinding behind the scenes in the music industry to intense public scrutiny, serious health battles, and the quiet struggles that ultimately forged one of the most recognizable voices in modern television and music culture. When you think of Randy Jackson, you probably picture the friendly judge from American Idol with his signature catchphrases, "Yeah, dog," and "It's a no from me, dog." Oi. You see the smiling face, the supportive mentor, the successful musician who played bass for some of the biggest names in music history. But what you don't see is the decades of struggle, the life-threatening health crisis, the professional betrayals, the constant battle with his own body, and the pain of being overshadowed and undervalued despite extraordinary talent and contributions. This is the untold story of Randy Jackson, a man whose suffering has been hidden behind a jovial persona, whose battles have been fought mostly in private, and whose pain runs far deeper than anyone watching him on television could possibly imagine. Randall Demetrius Jackson was born on June 23, 1956, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, into a working-class family. His father, Herman Jackson, was a plant foreman, and his mother, Julia, worked to help support the family. Baton Rouge in the 1950s and 60s was still deeply segregated, a place where being black meant facing daily discrimination, limited opportunities, and the constant reminder that society viewed you as second class. Randy grew up during the civil rights movement, watching his community fight for basic human dignity while trying to navigate a world designed to keep him down. From his earliest days, he understood that he would have to work twice as hard as his white peers to achieve half as much. This wasn't abstract knowledge. It was lived reality, experienced every single day. As a young boy, Randy discovered music. He was drawn to the bass guitar, an instrument that often goes unnoticed, but provides the foundation for everything else in a song. This choice was almost prophetic. Randy would spend his entire career being the foundation for other people's success, essential but often overlooked, crucial but rarely celebrated. He practiced obsessively, teaching himself techniques, studying the great bass players, developing skills that would eventually make him one of the most sought-after session musicians in the world. But the path to that success was filled with rejection, disappointment, and the grinding difficulty of trying to make it in an industry that didn't want to give a young black man from Louisiana a fair chance. Randy attended Southern University, a historically black university in Baton Rouge, where he studied music. This should have been a time of growth and opportunity, but it was also a time of struggle. He was trying to learn, to develop his craft, while also dealing with the financial pressures of college, the racial tensions of the era, and the uncertainty of what kind of future was even possible for someone like him. After college, Randy moved to California to pursue his music career. This was the late 1970s, and Los Angeles was the center of the music industry. But breaking into that world wasn't easy. Randy spent years grinding, playing in small clubs, taking whatever session work he could get, trying to make connections, hoping someone would give him a real opportunity. These were years of poverty and uncertainty. Randy has spoken about struggling to pay rent, about not knowing where his next meal would come from, about the constant anxiety of trying to survive while pursuing his dream. He was talented, extraordinarily talented, but talent alone doesn't guarantee success. You need luck, connections, timing, and most importantly, you need people in power to give you opportunities. Slowly, Randy began to get work as a session musician. He played bass on recordings for various artists, learning the craft of studio work, developing a reputation as someone who was reliable, professional, and skilled. But session musicians are invisible. You play on records that sell millions of copies and no one knows your name. You help create hits, and other people get the credit and the money. In the early 1980s, Randy's career began to take off. He joined Journey, one of the biggest rock bands in the world, playing bass on their album Raised on Radio. This should have been his breakthrough moment, playing with a major rock band, contributing to their sound, being part of something massive. But Randy's time with Journey was brief, and, from what can be gathered, not entirely satisfying. He was a black bass player in a predominantly white rock band during an era when rock music was even more racially divided than it is today. The dynamics were complicated. Despite his contributions, Randy was never really embraced as a full member of Journey in the way the core members were. He left the band after one album cycle, and while the official story was about musical differences and touring schedules, one has to wonder about the racial dynamics at play, about whether Randy felt fully accepted and valued, about what it was like being one of the only black musicians in that space. Throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s, Randy became one of the most in-demand session musicians in the world. He played bass for an astonishing array of artists: Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Jerry Garcia, Keith Richards, Aretha Franklin, Madonna, and dozens of others. If you listened to popular music in the 80s and 90s, you heard Randy Jackson's bass playing, even if you didn't know it. Think about what this means. Randy was good enough, talented enough, reliable enough that the biggest artists in the world wanted him on their recordings. He was contributing to some of the most successful and beloved music ever created. And yet, outside of industry insiders, almost no one knew his name. This is a specific kind of pain. Being essential but invisible. Being valued for your contribution but not recognized for it. Being skilled enough that everyone wants to work with you, but not famous enough that anyone knows who you are. Randy spent decades being the foundation for other people's success while struggling for recognition of his own. The financial side of session work is also complicated. While top session musicians can make good money, they don't make the kind of money the artists make. Randy played on albums that sold tens of millions of copies, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. His compensation was a session fee. Fair pay for the work, but nowhere near the wealth generated by his contributions. He watched as artists he'd played for became incredibly wealthy and famous, while he continued grinding, taking session after session, always working, never quite achieving the financial security or recognition that his talent deserved. This creates a psychological toll, feeling undervalued, feeling like your contributions aren't properly recognized, feeling like you're always on the outside looking in at the success you helped create. Randy also worked as a producer and A&R executive, discovering and developing talent for various record labels. He had a gift for recognizing talent and helping artists develop their sound. But this work, too, often went unrecognized. When the artists he discovered or produced became successful, they got the credit. Randy's role was acknowledged by industry insiders, but remained largely invisible to the general public. Throughout these years, Randy was also dealing with a health crisis that he kept hidden from almost everyone. He was struggling with his weight and developing type 2 diabetes. The condition was getting progressively worse, but Randy kept working, kept pushing forward, not wanting to show weakness or vulnerability in an industry that discards people the moment they're perceived as less than fully functional. The diabetes was slowly destroying his body from the inside. His blood sugar was dangerously high. He was developing complications. He was in pain, dealing with fatigue, experiencing the frightening symptoms of a disease that kills slowly and painfully if left unchecked. But he smiled. He worked. He pretended everything was fine because that's what survival in the entertainment industry requires. In 2002, Randy Jackson's life changed dramatically when he was selected as a judge for a new Fox reality competition show called American Idol. Along with Simon Cowell and Paula Abdul, Randy would judge shiny aspiring singers competing for a recording contract and instant fame. From the outside, this looked like Randy's big break. Finally, after decades of being invisible, he would be on television every week, recognized by millions of people, achieving the fame that had eluded him throughout his career. And in many ways, that's true. American Idol made Randy Jackson a household name. But this success came with its own complications and pain. Randy was now famous, but not for his musical accomplishments. Most American Idol viewers had no idea about his incredible career as a session musician and producer. They didn't know he'd played with Journey, that his bass had been on countless hit records, that he'd worked with music royalty. Instead, he became known for catchphrases and for being the nice judge, the one who tried to find something positive to say even when acts were terrible, the one who softened Simon Cowell's harsh criticisms, the one who was supportive and encouraging. His deep musical knowledge and expertise were reduced to sound bites and familiar phrases. This is another kind of invisibility, being famous but having your actual accomplishments and talents overlooked. Randy was on television every week, recognized everywhere he went, and yet the work he was most proud of, the career he'd built over decades, remained largely unknown to his new audience. There's also something painful about the dynamic on American Idol. Simon Cowell, who had far less hands-on musical experience than Randy, became the show's dominant personality. He was the one everyone talked about, the one who drove the narrative, the one whose opinions were treated as definitive. Meanwhile, Randy, with his decades of experience working with the biggest artists in the world, was often dismissed as too soft, too nice, not critical enough. The racial dynamics were impossible to ignore as well. Simon, a white British man, was the authority figure. Paula, a white American woman, was the emotional one. Randy, the black American man with the most actual musical credentials, was often positioned as the comic relief, the one with the catchphrases, the one who provided levity, the one who wasn't taken as seriously, despite being the most qualified judge musically. Randy has never publicly complained about this dynamic, always maintaining his professional persona. But one has to imagine the frustration of being the most musically accomplished person on that panel, and yet being positioned as somehow less authoritative than your colleagues. Behind the scenes during American Idol's early years, Randy was fighting a battle for his life. In 2003, just as the show was becoming a massive hit, Randy's diabetes reached a critical point. He weighed around 350 pounds, and doctors told him he was in grave danger. His blood sugar levels were so high that he was at serious risk of heart attack, stroke, kidney failure, and all the other devastating complications of uncontrolled diabetes. Randy made the decision to undergo gastric bypass surgery, a serious and risky procedure that would permanently alter his digestive system. This wasn't cosmetic surgery or a vanity project. This was a desperate attempt to save his own life. The surgery was successful, and Randy would eventually lose over 100 pounds, dramatically improving his health. But the physical recovery from gastric bypass is brutal. Randy was dealing with pain, adjustment to his radically changed body, the psychological challenges of such a dramatic weight loss, and the ongoing management of his diabetes, all while maintaining his public persona on one of the most popular television shows in America. He couldn't show weakness. He couldn't let America see him struggling. He had to show up every week, smiling, being supportive, delivering his catchphrases, pretending that everything was fine while he was dealing with a life-threatening health crisis and recovery from major surgery. The psychological toll of this, maintaining a cheerful public persona while privately fighting for your life, is something most people can't comprehend. Randy did this for years, and almost no one knew the extent of his suffering. Even after the surgery and weight loss, Randy's battle with diabetes didn't end. Type 2 diabetes is a chronic condition that requires constant management. Randy has had to completely change his diet, monitor his blood sugar constantly, take medications, exercise regularly, and basically reorganize his entire life around managing this disease. He's spoken about how difficult this has been, how he can't eat the foods he loves, how he has to be constantly vigilant, how even with all his effort, the disease is still there, still threatening, still capable of killing him if he lets his guard down for even a moment. Living with a chronic illness like diabetes is exhausting in ways that healthy people simply don't understand. During his time on American Idol, Randy also dealt with professional tensions and disappointments. The show went through various judge changes over the years, and Randy was the only original judge to last for all 12 seasons of the show's initial run. This sounds like loyalty and success, but it may also reflect being taken for granted. The reliable one who would always be there, who wouldn't make waves, who wouldn't demand more money or better treatment. When American Idol ended its original run in 2016, Randy's time on the show simply ended. There was no grand farewell for him comparable to what other judges received, no special recognition of his 12 seasons of service. He'd been the show's constant presence, the bridge between different judge panels, the one who provided continuity, and then he was just done, moving on without the fanfare or celebration he deserved. After American Idol, Randy has worked on various projects, other music competition shows, production work, business ventures, but nothing has matched the visibility and cultural impact of Idol. There's a pain in that too, having your biggest moment of fame be behind you, being in your 60s and wondering what comes next, being known primarily for something that's over. Randy has also dealt with the complicated legacy of American Idol itself. The show was phenomenally successful, launching the careers of artists like Kelly Clarkson, Carrie Underwood, and Jennifer Hudson. But it was also criticized for exploiting young talent, for the manufactured nature of its success stories, for the way it reduced artistry to a popularity contest. Randy, as a judge, was part of that system. He helped decide who succeeded and who failed, who got their dreams and who went home crushed. He's seen incredibly talented people not make it, not because they lacked talent, but because they didn't fit the show's format, or because they had a bad week, or because America didn't vote for them. That has to weigh on you, being part of a system that crushes as many dreams as it fulfills. There's also the personal toll of fame at Randy's level. He's recognized in public, approached constantly, expected to be on all the time. But he's not famous enough to have the kind of security and privacy that major stars enjoy. He's stuck in that uncomfortable middle ground, too famous for anonymity, not famous enough for the full benefits of stardom. Randy's family life has also been complicated. He's been married twice, first to Elizabeth Jackson, with whom he had a daughter, Taylor, and later to Erica Riker, with whom he had 2 children, Zoe and Jordan. His second marriage ended in divorce in 2014 after nearly 2 decades together, a painful ending to a long relationship. Divorce is traumatic for anyone, but going through it in the public eye while maintaining a cheerful television persona, while dealing with all the other pressures Randy was under, that's a special kind of difficult. He had to process his personal pain privately while still showing up for work, still being Randy Jackson, the friendly television personality, still pretending everything was fine. His children have had to grow up with a famous father, dealing with the complications that brings, the lack of privacy, the public scrutiny, the pressure of having a parent who's known by millions of people. Randy has tried to protect them from the spotlight, but that's not entirely possible when you're a public figure. Randy has also watched as the music industry he spent his career in has been completely transformed. The streaming era has decimated the session musician economy. The opportunities that allowed Randy to build his career barely exist anymore. He came up in an era when being a top session musician could provide a good living and relative stability. That world is largely gone now. He's seen the devaluation of musicianship in popular music, the rise of producers and computers over live musicians, the way streaming has made it nearly impossible for working musicians to earn a decent living. The industry that gave him a career, that he contributed so much to, barely exists in the form he knew anymore. There's a sadness in that. Watching something you loved and worked so hard in essentially disappear. Randy has also had to confront his own mortality in ways that go beyond his diabetes. He's in his late 60s now, dealing with the inevitable aging process, the aches and pains, the awareness that more of your life is behind you than ahead of you. He's lost friends and colleagues to death, illness, and the simple passage of time. He's also had to watch as younger musicians and television personalities have taken the spotlight, as the industry moves on to the next generation. This is natural and inevitable, but it doesn't make it any less painful to go from being relevant to being a relic, from being current to being nostalgic, from being part of the conversation to being a memory of a different era. There's a specific tragedy in Randy Jackson's story that's different from other entertainment figures. He was extraordinarily talented and successful in ways that most people never knew about. His greatest professional achievements, his session work, his production credits, his contributions to some of the most important music of the late 20th century, were largely invisible to the general public. When he finally achieved visibility and fame through American Idol, it was for being a television personality rather than for his musical accomplishments. The recognition came, but not for the things he was most proud of, not for the work that represented decades of dedication and skill. Randy has always maintained his friendly, positive public persona. He doesn't complain, doesn't talk about his pain, doesn't make his struggles public beyond what he's chosen to share about his diabetes. But that cheerful facade requires constant effort, constant performance, constant suppression of authentic feelings. Think about what it takes to smile for the cameras when you're in pain, to be encouraging and supportive when you're struggling yourself, to maintain a positive attitude when you're dealing with health crises, professional disappointments, personal losses, and all the accumulated wounds of a long life in a difficult industry. Randy has also dealt with the racial dimensions of his career in ways that are impossible to separate from everything else. As a black musician and entertainment figure, he's had to navigate an industry that has historically exploited black talent while giving power and rewards primarily to white executives and artists. He's seen black artists create musical genres and cultural movements, only to watch white artists and executives profit most from those innovations. He's experienced the subtle and not-so-subtle racism of an industry that values black creativity, but is reluctant to give black people real power and equity. On American Idol, Randy was the only black judge for many seasons, carrying the burden of representation whether he wanted to or not. Every opinion he expressed, every decision he made, was viewed through the lens of race by at least some viewers. He had to be conscious of how he was perceived, careful not to confirm stereotypes, aware that he represented more than just himself. This is exhausting, being a representative rather than just an individual, having to think about the racial implications of your every action, carrying the weight of other people's prejudices and projections. Randy did this for 12 years on national television. And the psychological toll of that kind of constant awareness is profound. Now, in his late 60s, Randy continues to work in music and entertainment. He's survived his health crisis through constant vigilance and lifestyle management. He's maintained his career despite industry changes and personal setbacks. He's raised his children and maintained relationships despite the pressures of fame and the challenges of his profession. But survival isn't the same as thriving, and success doesn't erase suffering. Randy Jackson has spent his entire adult life being undervalued, despite being extraordinarily talented, being invisible, despite being essential, being successful in ways that most people never recognized. He's fought a life-threatening disease that still threatens him every day. He's navigated an industry that has historically exploited black talent. He's dealt with the pain of divorce and the complexities of family life in the public eye. He's watched his greatest professional achievements go largely unrecognized while being famous for something that didn't represent his deepest contributions. The friendly judge with the catchphrases carries more pain than anyone watching television ever suspected. Behind that smile is a lifetime of struggle, a constant battle with illness, decades of being overlooked despite extraordinary talent, and the accumulated wounds of trying to succeed in an industry and society that makes success incredibly difficult for someone like him. Randy Jackson's tragedy is that he did everything right. He developed his talent, he worked incredibly hard, he made extraordinary contributions to music, he achieved fame and success, and yet the pain never stopped. The recognition never matched the contribution. The health crisis never fully resolved. The industry that he gave so much to never fully valued him the way he deserved. He keeps smiling, keeps working, keeps moving forward because that's what survivors do. But behind that famous smile is a depth of suffering that most people will never see or understand.